Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Launch Code and Women Who Code Portland, for this opportunity to kick off what sounds like an amazing series. I can't wait to hear more stories after this. Um, so I'll just jump right in. Let me share my screen. I have a couple of slides here. How about now?
Looks great.
Okay,
Just the one
awesome.
slide.
One slide, yay! So anyway, I grew up in really was a working class family in Cleveland, Ohio. Honestly, didn't know anybody who had a computer. And in fact, I just loved video games. And one time I went to the store and saw the brand new Mac on 1984, and I was so excited about it. I begged and begged and begged my parents to buy me the Mac. Unfortunately, it was like $2,500, and being a working class family, that's a little bit out of most people's ranges. So I got instead, at age 10, a TRS-80, which is, as you can see in the picture, kind of like a keyboard. It attaches to your television, and it is full color graphics and sounds, and I played games on it. It came with a booklet that had some really simple, basic programs. So I would copy all the programs, and then as I got better, I would edit the programs, make them my own, change the graphics, make sounds happen. And eventually I got to the place where I was making my own codes, my own programs from scratch using BASIC. So that was honestly a lot of fun, and really got my interest started in computers. Then, although I took computer science classes in both middle school and high school, I didn't really think of it as a career choice. I really just more thought of it as, hey, this is a fun way for me to play video games. I can get some homework done on it, things like that. It was really more of a necessity and not really a career for me. So the summer before my senior year, I actually left home, and I honestly probably would have dropped out of school if I weren't asked by a teacher to be part of academic decathlon. And this was really an amazing opportunity, and it was one of the most challenging things I had ever done. It really taught me independence and a love of learning, and gave me a drive for really just going after the things that you really want and being shown that you can succeed at them. So it was amazing to work with teammates on a common goal. We were in school like 6 days a week. It was pretty intense, and we ended up getting first in our state of Ohio, and then we went to nationals and got first in our region, and then fifth in the nation. So it was really amazing for me to have this this incredible opportunity to work with these amazing people. And you can see the picture here of us. We actually got to meet the president at the time, was Bush Sr. at the White House. I'm the crabby one on the right, in the daisy dress, very 17. Really, I graduated high school after that experience feeling like I could conquer the world, that really I could go anywhere and I could succeed. So I did just that. I packed up all of my stuff and I moved all the way across the country to Arizona, to Phoenix, Arizona. And really, I just wanted to get away from the winters. I had never been west of Michigan, so it was this big, huge change and just something fresh and new, and I didn't know anybody there. So I was just going for it. I ended up not being able to go to college right away, even though I really wanted to, because of having to support myself full time. But I did, after about a year or so working various temping retail jobs, not really very fulfilling jobs, I started volunteering at a food co-op. I was a vegetarian, I'm now a vegan, and so I really wanted the discount on soy milk and granola. And this was a great opportunity. They gave me a discount. I volunteered a few hours a week, and this was actually where I dipped my toe into tech as an adult. Which is like an unlikely place where you would even think that that would happen. But I had a manager who really kind of took me under his wing, and he showed me the member database and how it worked. He showed me graphic design on a Mac, And so I got to do the layout for the newsletter and just do a variety of things on the computers that they had there. And it actually, I just started playing with stuff all over again and finding that love of computers really fresh and new. So, you know, and I had that mentor from my manager who really was supportive. Then I ended up getting a full-time job there, and it allowed me to even create some of my own databases. I created these databases of all these local resources, so people would come in and they would ask, hey, where can I take Tai Chi classes? And we had a whole list of places in the database for them to look that up. So it was really a lot of fun. After a few years in Phoenix, I ended up just, again, on a whim, moving to New York City. So I packed up all my bags and went all the way across the country, back east again. And I worked a few more retail jobs before a friend of my roommate offered me this really amazing opportunity. She worked at an ISP, or an internet service provider, and she said that they were hiring people in tech support. And I said, well, I don't know if I could do that, but she encouraged me to come on in and to just talk with the manager. I did get an interview, and you know, I said, hey, I don't know a lot about the internet. However, this was early on in like 93, 94. He said, no problem, we'll train you. You have all this other experience with computers, and they really entrusted that I would learn as I went. So I worked there for about a year or so, and during that year, I learned all about how the internet works. I would actually shadow the system administrator and network engineer because I would say, hey, can I take you out for coffee and you can tell me all about TCP/IP? And the network engineer would always say, yes, no problem, we'll do that. And whenever there was software needed to be installed on these new servers, I volunteered to help the system administrator to do that. And I just really took any opportunity I could to learn more. On the side, I built some of my own early websites, learned HTML. I learned, I taught myself Unix, and it was just so much fun. I really felt like understanding how the internet works was like having a superpower. And especially at that time, I would have friends and family ask me what I did, and it was hard to explain, but it was a lot of fun. So at that time, I was finally old enough where I could apply for financial aid to college without having to say, as an independent, and not having to say what my parents made. So, and I wanted to come back to Portland. I applied to a college here called Lewis and Clark College, which is just a small liberal arts school, and I got in and got a grant, and so I again moved all the way across the country to Portland, Oregon. And honestly, it's here that I then got a job at another local ISP, and then taught myself Perl while learning C and C++ in college. I was studying computer science and math there. But I was really kind of thinking I'd go into engineering. I still didn't think of computers as maybe a career. It was really just this fun thing that I got to do as a job that I really loved. So after about 2 years of college, I got this really amazing opportunity to work at a small local startup that I had been working at the ISP and moved from tech support into a system administrator role. And this opportunity was really offered to me by a former coworker from that company, and said, hey, we're small, we really need people, but it would mean that I would have to quit school because I was going to school during the day and working in the evenings, and this was really a 9-to-5 kind of job plus on call. So I had to make a really tough decision. Do I leave school and take on this opportunity, or do I stay in school and keep at this? And in the end, I decided that I would take the job. And so I had to stop going to school at that time, but I would still periodically take classes at the local state university here and there, because I still just loved learning and I wanted to take more and more classes when I could. So this job as at the new company was, like I said, a system administrator job. I also was a Perl programmer, so I got to write software that was used as automation and server setup and things like that, as well as I got to write some of the front-end CGI that powered the website. So it was really a place where I wore a lot of different hats, and it gave me the opportunity to spend some days racking and stacking servers like you see in the picture. And so I was on my feet and lifting things and wiring things together. And then some days I would be coding, some days I would be monitoring and managing the systems, improving the performance of them, optimizing them, working with other engineers on improvements and performance stuff. It was, I even worked on network gear. So it was one of these things where I got to do so many things and grow in a lot of different ways. And again, being at a small place to start really allowed me to just kind of find the things that I was interested in and work on them. Again, my boss there was super supportive of that, and eventually actually promoted me to a supervisory role of all of the ops team. So it was a really awesome opportunity. Unfortunately, that company got purchased by Monster.com, which was located back east. And they offered me the opportunity to go back east to Massachusetts and work on Windows, which I was a Unix person, and Linux person. So it would be a whole new technology, and living in Massachusetts, I ended up deciding to take their severance package and not go back east again. And I really loved Portland, so I didn't want to leave again. I found a job through a worker at Nike, which is where I have been ever since then. And I started out at Nike as a system administrator and a Perl programmer still. I worked on a lot of the back-end automation of systems. Really what you'll find today is you don't necessarily see people as sysadmins in kind of modern companies. You see people really labeled as operations or maybe SRE, site reliability engineers, or DevOps. You sometimes see people being called, or areas that they work in. And honestly, we're just kind of this lazy bunch who, if we have to do something more than twice, then we automate it. We like to kind of get our hands dirty in a lot of different areas, and really we become really expert at troubleshooting because we have to focus on a lot of different things. So after a few years, I think it was like 7 years of being in that role, there was an opportunity to be a architect. It was a new role that was created, which is called infrastructure architect, and it was somebody who really would be focused on the design and the setup and how everything was going to be configured from an infrastructure standpoint, which is the compute, the storage, the network, all those layers. And so I interviewed for that. I ended up getting that job. It was this really amazing opportunity because I was able to kind of define what it was that I was doing in that role. And I really loved being able to step back and see how all the things worked together and really design things strategically for the future, not just troubleshooting immediate problems, but really focusing on how things are going to grow and how we're going to improve everything long term. So then kind of infrastructure went the way of the cloud, and with that, I really started to focus more on the application side of things and taking kind of my history of more of the application side of stuff and applying it to architecture. So I started working as a software architect, which it has there are a lot of different titles depending on the company that you work at as to what the architect would be called. But in general, we have kind of software architects as a very general high-level architecture role. And what I really, so I have some kind of descriptions of what you might see in architect. There's enterprise architects, so they'll work across a really huge enterprise, such as like Intel or Microsoft, or they'll have these really big companies, and these people will look at the systems as a whole and look at very high-level strategic direction for the company. There's also people that do solutions architects. So you'll work usually in an area. Sometimes you're consumer facing if you're working for a service provider. Sometimes you'll help with looking across a program or a bunch of different servers to look at big picture design. I talked about infrastructure architects. And then there's other kind of specialty in the software architecture area. I'm a technical architect is my title now. I work specifically on the cloud, and I work with engineers. There's also data architects. There's also UX architects. There are all sorts of different kinds of architects, but they're kind of like specialty areas that they may know better than others. They're really, though, generally speaking, designing and strategizing on systems and how they interact together. So I would say the best thing about being an architect is, again, the same thing that I loved about being a system administrator, where I was able to work on a bunch of different things. So my typical day is not a typical day. Every day is a little bit different. Sometimes I'm in meetings talking about a new project. Sometimes I'm working with engineers, troubleshooting a live problem in production. Some days I'm coding a POC, so I still get my hands dirty in the code. I'll review PRs. I still just will still work strategically with both product people and engineers. And the main goals of a cloud architect really are listed here, and those are the ilities. So really you're trying to understand the technology of a cloud provider and then apply, how do my systems, how do they remain scalable? How are they flexible? How are they maintainable? Really ensuring that security is a part of everything that we design, that performance is not forgotten about, that really, like, you have to be able to support and grow the system and think about what it is that your future might bring. And really, not knowing the future, you can kind of make some educated guesses based on past experiences and where technology is headed. So that's really high level what a cloud architect does. I have another slide about kind of day-to-day activities. Really, everything I do is all over the board, and these are some kind of key characteristics of what a cloud architect would do, or really an architect in general. I think the last one is maybe a soft skill. The BS detector is sometimes really just listening and understanding a technical problem and applying your learnings and figuring out the best solution and kind of coming together with the teams to come up with that idea. And so that's, in a nutshell, what it means to be an architect. And in my spare time, which is not a lot, but I really love putting together, so I have this women's hackathon that I've had happen 4 times now in 3 years, and I really wanted to focus on getting women together to work on a single cause during a single event and really come together and learn and network and make new friends. And that's been just this exciting thing that's grown and grown over the last 3 years, and it's called We Code, Hackathon for Women. And I love talking at schools and really teaching young people about computer science, because I think that there's not enough education out there and there's not enough maybe female role models. So I really love being in front of kids and kind of talking about technology and what it is that we do and all the fun things that are in a career of tech. So that's my story for now. I don't know what will happen next, but that's where we're at now. There were some really awesome questions that Launch Code gave me, so I wanted to step through those. And then I think after this, we'll open it up to questions from everybody here. So let's see. So the first question is, did you ever suffer from imposter syndrome? If so, how did you get past it? And the answer is absolutely yes. I suffer from imposter syndrome even now sometimes. So when I have to work with a new team or I work on a new technology, there is that learning curve and you kind of doubt yourself and you wonder, are people going to take me seriously? Am I sounding like an idiot? All of those things that really come along with that. But from experience, I've learned that it's okay not to know everything, that it's better to admit when you don't know something and to ask for kind of an explanation or more information. Take the time to listen and research and ask questions. Always feel free to do that. That's really what helps me kind of get past my imposter syndrome and kind of move beyond all my nervousness to a place of really understanding and connecting with other people better. But just kind of reminding yourself of those past successes and being confident is really what I find helps me get past it. All right, so the next question is, what challenges did you encounter with learning to code, and how did you overcome them? Oh, well, I have many, many times been frustrated, either learning a new language or really any new technology. And some of the, I kind of made a list of things that helped me, and I'm going to kind of read them because I think they're things that I still do today. One of them is read and or watch tutorials. So sometimes there's more than one way to learn, right? If you read a tutorial or you read the docs, it doesn't make sense, maybe watch a tutorial, or maybe you want to start by watching something and then going and reading up on it. I find that sometimes approaching learning from multiple facets is helpful. The second thing I do, this is very important, is I take breaks. So if I've been working for 12 hours on a problem and I'm just banging my head and feeling like I'm not getting anywhere, I step away from the problem. Sometimes just sleeping on it and coming back in the morning, it comes to you in the shower the next morning, or you're walking into work and you feel like, oh, I've thought about it. And now it's kind of a little bit clearer to me. So that I think is really helpful. Take breaks. Don't try and always just push through and you've been working really, really long day. I also like to look at other people's code and kind of see how they solved a problem and dissect it, see if I can kind of guess what they were doing. I find that especially in a new, you can find stuff on GitHub, you can find examples online, but I really like to take somebody's code and dissect it and see if I can understand what it's doing and why it's doing it and what the creator of that code was really thinking about when they did that. The fourth thing I like to do is really talking through a tough part with somebody. It doesn't necessarily even have to be somebody who is an expert in that area, but sometimes I just talk about it and walk through the steps that I've tried. I think, oh, wait, there's this thing I didn't try. Just talking about it out loud helps me figure out what I was missing. And then if after that, and I'm still stuck on something, I do ask for help. I don't think there's any shame in asking for help from somebody. I think perfect example is I'm trying to learn React and Redux, which for me is a little out of my comfort zone. And it's been a bit of a challenge for me. So I have asked several different people to help me with little bits of that. And also reading, watching tutorials, all the things that I kind of mentioned before, taking breaks, and lastly, I will ask people. So I'll just sit down with someone and say, hey, explain to me how this works. I'm not following this part. And people are very helpful, very understanding when you approach them. I have not found that anyone's told me no, other than maybe later. And then just reminding yourself that this is really how everyone feels when they're learning something new. I took Japanese in college, and at first it was, I didn't follow, but the more and more I practiced, the easier it got and the better I got at it. So same with calculus. I wasn't born understanding calculus, but through enough practice and time, I got really good at it. So those are my tips there. Okay, the next question. At any point, did you feel discouraged or doubtful about your career path? In the end, how did you know you were exactly where you wanted or needed to be? Yes, I definitely have had times where I felt doubtful. I've had managers that maybe weren't so supportive. I worked on teams that were probably a little bit toxic. But when those times have happened, I've tried communicating those issues. If that didn't work, sometimes it was time for me to look for a new team or look for a new opportunity. I really think that anything worth doing, though, in the end is going to be a challenge, and there are going to be ups and downs to any job that you were to choose. So tech just being one of those things that you're going to have new technology, things are going to change quickly, sometimes teams change, and really just being able to be flexible and being able to move with those, bend with those changes is really what's kept me at tech, and really fulfilled. I love it. I love learning new things. And I can't imagine working in any other industry anymore. Let's see. So the next question, what advice would you give someone who felt like giving up learning a new programming language because they felt it was too hard, or someone who felt like giving up a career in tech because they felt like they wouldn't fit in with the culture of other coders? Okay, so I kind of answered the first part of that question, so I'll just go on to the second half of it, which I think I kind of said before, which is any career worth having is going to have hard times, and you have to make choices about when you want to stick with something versus when maybe some change is imminent and needs to be had. But most hard things are going to need perseverance and grit and the ability to kind of stick with something. So that's one thing to just keep in mind when you're learning new things and new technologies. You sometimes have to just power through. For the second half of the question, I often feel like I am different in the room. I walk into a room, I feel like I'm different. But I also watch and absorb and try and find things that are common between me and the people that I work with. Find out what someone's Scooby snack is. So I feel like I'm having a challenge working with someone. I find out that they're really into board games. So I start talking to them about different board games that they like, and we find that commonality. And often that is enough to then kind of change the tone of our relationship and really find these similarities, and rather than focus on the differences. And that's really helped me feel that even though my environment's not always, as diverse as I'd like it to be, I'm still being accepted for who I am, and I'm able to accept people for who they are. And honestly, people surprise me all the time. So I continue just to be my authentic self and encourage others to do the same. So next, when interviewing possible programmers for your team, what are you looking for in a candidate? What is an important question you ask them that makes or breaks the interview? And what is the best question you have been asked by an interviewee? I'm going to say that there's not like a single question that I would think makes an interview. I really look at the whole of the interview. And same with breaking it. I think that if you are asked a technical question that you don't know the answer to, that wouldn't be a deal breaker for me. It would be, how do you then approach it? I don't know the answer, but you say, here's what I would do. Here's what I would do to find out the answer, and what my steps would be, and maybe applying some of these other things I've learned to try and figure out that solution. So I always look at both somebody's technical abilities along with their interpersonal and soft skills, because you have to work on a team and you have to work together, and you want people to, all the people to succeed. So you want someone who seems like they're going to be a good fit and that they want to be a good fit. I would say my tips though would be for the deal breakers would be just to be careful about not talking dirt about a former company or a coworker or anything like that. If someone asks why you left a job, you can talk about, hey, this didn't seem like a good fit, or the career path wasn't really what I was, the opportunities weren't there that I was looking for. Those are fine answers, but to talk badly about the company is probably best not to be talked about in the interview. So that might be a deal breaker answer. I don't know. Let's see. I would say that the best questions that I've been asked have to do with really questions that show you're interested in the job and that you want to know how you would fit in. So I've had people ask, like, what do you like about working here? Or what They want to know what the workspace looks like and want to tour and maybe meet some of the extended coworkers. Those kind of things show that they are interested, and really that they want to see how they fit and how the job fits their needs. I think it's important for both parties to really want to work together. So I like those kind of questions. Okay, the next question is, what is your advice for someone who wants to make an impact but doesn't want to be a manager? And how can someone make an impact and advance in their career as a doer or specialist? Well, I am a perfect example of that because I do not want to be a manager. I've been in tech for 20 years now, and I've been asked if I wanted to be a manager, probably as long as that. I was a supervisor for a little bit, but I just realized at that time that it wasn't where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be a people manager. I love being a technical leader. I love being able to get people together to work on a problem. I love thinking about hard problems. I love being that expert that people come to, being a mentor for people. But I don't really want to be an HR manager. I don't want those responsibilities. I really love keeping my hands dirty. So I've decided to go down this path of being an architect and really looking at myself as a kind of a generalist, even though I have these specialty areas. So that's something that you could always do. There's also people who become experts or specialists as engineers, and a lot of companies offer a path to go up into a career chain within engineering. And so you could become a specialist in a specific technology. There are people who write books, who go on lecture circuits, who do all kinds of amazing things as individual contributors. I think that there are a lot of opportunities for that, and don't feel like that should be like the management is your only opportunity. There's so many opportunities. All right, well, I think those are all the questions. So if you guys wanted to open up the floodgates to any other questions. Also, here's my contact information. If you guys want to tweet with me or LinkedIn friend me, feel free to do that. And I can show this again later on.
How do we do questions? Do we just ask?
That's a good question. Moderators, did you want people to submit through chat, or do you want people to chat out?
Submit your questions through the chat window.
How did you decide which resources will help you learn when there are so many? That is a good question. I've found lately that I have been listening to podcasts, and I would say I pick and choose which podcasts and which actual different stories within those podcasts I watch or I listen to. I follow some really key people on Twitter who I think have a lot of good information and will often post links to articles that I've found super helpful. I think it's hard to necessarily, I think I'm always trying to figure that out. I think that's a really, really good question, because I'm always asking other people for, hey, so here, what are some new resources? What are some new podcasts? What are some new sites where I can find out more information? So that definitely changes over time. So hope that answers your question. Do you have an overall career plan or direction? How do you know what you want to do next? Aha, that's a great question. I think that in my career, I've always tried to find a new challenge. So something that was harder than what I was already doing. And if I ever felt like I got bored in an area, I look for something new. So I assume that that's just what my career will continue to do, is if I get bored with what I'm doing and I find it not challenging anymore, I'll find something else to work on, whether it's on the side or whether it's as part of my main job. But for me, it's been finding that new challenge and looking for that new opportunity. Sometimes it's even going to a manager or going to other people in the company and like selling yourself and trying to like come up with something new. I've many times had to define a new job because there wasn't really one that existed. And I think that that's sometimes you just need to write your own future. For me, I don't know what will be next for me. I hope to just take on more challenges. It's an awesome question. Okay, next question. Can you talk more about the difference between technical leadership and management and why you decided against management? Yes, that's a great question. So for me, I feel like the aspects of being an HR manager means I have to, not have to, but I do more of the supporting and guidance of individual team members and their career goals and maybe the hiring and the firing and that organization and how it grows. That's what I see as more of a manager. I'll call them an HR manager. Whereas I love to be more of this technical leader and get to speak with people and about technology and come to agreements about where we're headed with technology. And be a leader in that area is more of a guide. It's not really necessarily helping other people with their career, but helping the company and maybe a product or maybe an area within the company move forward. So I hope that answers your question. I also love, the other thing I love about being a technical leader is I love doing talks. I love sharing the information that I have with others. So we have a community of practice day on Thursdays, and I'll sign up to present something that I know something about and open it up for questions. So those are the kind of things I feel like a technical leader would do that maybe not necessarily an HR leader would do. More questions? How do you secure mentors, especially those influencers or approaching those in the C-suite? That's a great question. I have had trouble finding mentors, to be honest. I think that the best way that I've come across mentors is kind of accidentally. So I've really found someone who knew something about something that I wanted to learn and offered to take them out and have them explain things to me. And so I didn't explicitly ask them to be my mentor, but I just treated them as such. And I took that opportunity to ask them a lot of questions. Sometimes they were technical, sometimes it was career advice. Sometimes it was really like, how do I handle this very specific situation? Sometimes it was more general questions. But I've really just, I think a lot of the time been lucky to have managers who have been really, really supportive. And I've often used those relationships with my managers to provide that mentorship area. So I would say that in some big companies that there is like a mentorship program. Not all little companies would have that. I know that in some technical organizations or meetups that might be a good way to meet some people who have more experience or may have information about an area that you want to learn more about. So I would recommend going to meetups if that's something you're interested in as well. I think that's my best advice with regards to that. Question from the Mentor Center. How do you assert yourself as a knowledge expert rather than be seen as a woman? And how do you suggest that other women do the same? Well, that's great. I really think that experience and confidence are what have made me be seen by other people as an expert in my area. So sometimes you have to spend more time proving yourself and your knowledge as a woman rather than if I walked into the room as a man. I think that that's unfortunately still the case. But I do find that that me talking for a little bit usually shows that I have an understanding of the technology, and I get that respect pretty fast. And that, again, that just comes with the confidence and with that experience over time. I would definitely suggest to other women to speak up in meetings. I would say that if you're nervous or if you're a shy person, I'm very nervous in new situations. I'm not always the first person to speak up in those kinds of situations. But if I have somebody that's with me that is an ally for me, whether that's a man or a woman who can kind of have my back, sometimes it feels like I get that confidence as well. So if you're ever going into a situation, whether it's in a meetup or it's a meeting or a conference or a new environment, sometimes having a buddy come with you is enough to give you that confidence and really show people that you are confident and an expert in that area. More questions? Now, how are we doing on time?
So I think we set this up from 4 p.m. to 4:45, but I believe we have this until 5:30 Pacific time. So we could keep going for a while, but we also told people it would be 45 minutes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so we should, any other, maybe we could do one last question and then just wrap up.
Okay, it looks like we have a new question. So I mentioned We Code. Do you have any other passion projects that you've worked on either to build my own skills or the community? So my passion project right now is really to get into middle schools a real computer science curriculum locally. So that's what I've been working on since January. It's not been very long, but I'm really trying to get, at least in Portland to start, a true computer science curriculum where all children in Portland have access to computer science, not as an elective, not as an after-school activity, but everybody gets to take it. And that way there's not any self-select, there's not any kind of people who go to a good school get it and people who don't get it. I really want there to be equal access to computer science. So that's kind of my passion right now. I also, like I said, I'm learning React and Redux on the side. I've been attending machine learning meetups because I have a personal interest in that. I don't know how I'll be able to apply that to my work, but I am working on ways as to how I can apply that to my actual job and get more time to do it. So I have a lot of little things in the fire, kind of keep my passion going. Thanks for the question. These have been great questions. Thank you so much.
So it looks like we have one more question. Do you think we have time to answer it?
I'm happy to answer if you guys are
okay. So it's have you been to any conferences or trainings that have been useful? How do the women-centric ones compare?
Yes, I was so lucky I got to go to Grace Hopper this past year, and excuse me, that is probably the best conference I have ever been to. I thought it was so amazing to be around so many crazy smart women, and the different tracks allowed me to really pick and choose different areas of things that I wanted to learn more about, and it wasn't necessarily stuff I did on a day-to-day basis. So I really got to expand into other areas. So the IoT stuff, which I don't get to play with at all in my job, I went to some of those sessions. I went to sessions on security. I went to sessions on more personal growth and career growth. So there was really, really amazing opportunities to learn from all sorts of different tracks, and meeting the people there was phenomenal. I met so many people, and I wish that I could bring them all home with me and we could hang out all the time. It was really, really fun. I've also been to other conferences. So typically the conferences I go to, it's not women-centric, they're more technology specific. So I've been to AWS reInvent since I'm a cloud architect. We work on AWS cloud. So I've been to that conference a couple of times, and it's huge and crazy, but it's very specific. So If that's a technology that you're specifically interested in, that's the focus. I've been to the O'Reilly OzCon, which is an open source conference. It's been in Portland a lot of times, so I've been when it's been in Portland for several years. And that's fun too, because it's all these open sourcey things that I love working on open source stuff. So I always find a lot of really great information from that. So I would say if there's a conference that really focuses on a technology that you're interested in, it's worth checking out.